A racist millionaire mocks an elderly black woman while waiting in line, not knowing she owns the building. Mavis Johnson entered Java Haven, the quaint coffee shop nestled in the heart of her neighborhood. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. She smiled at the barista, a bright young woman named Tasha, who always greeted her with a warm smile that brightened even the cloudiest of days. Mavis had been a regular here for over a decade, and the shop had become a second home, a place where the stories of the neighborhood converged. As Mavis approached the counter, she glanced around the room, her heart swelling with pride at the vibrant tapestry of people. Young professionals hunched over their laptops, students poring over textbooks, and retired folks like her sharing stories of their past. This was her community, a mix of cultures that had flourished together through the years. But today felt different. Mavis sensed a shift in the atmosphere as she reached the back of the line. Standing ahead of her was Bradley Hargrove, a newcomer whose ostentatious designer clothes and brash demeanor made him stand out like a sore thumb. Mavis had noticed him frequenting the shop lately, often accompanied by a gaggle of equally entitled friends. They seemed to think their wealth gave them the right to belittle anyone they deemed beneath them. As Mavis fumbled through her purse, searching for the exact change, she overheard Bradley's voice rise above the gentle hum of chatter. "Can you believe this place? It's like a museum for the forgotten. Slow as molasses, too," he sneered, gesturing dismissively toward Mavis. Laughter erupted from his friends, a sharp sound that pierced through Mavis's moment of nostalgia. She felt her heart race, not from embarrassment, but from the simmering anger that began to bubble within her. She had faced prejudice before, the kind that made her feel small and insignificant, but she had learned to rise above it. Still, something about the mockery struck a nerve today. Mavis's hands trembled as she finally pulled out the coins, her resolve hardening. She could let this slide, ignore the insults, and maintain her dignity. But what about all the others who had been belittled by people like Bradley? Would she be complicit in allowing them to continue feeling superior? No, Mavis would not back down. "Excuse me," Mavis called out, her voice steady despite the nerves dancing in her stomach. The laughter faded and a few heads turned in her direction. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments." Bradley turned, surprise flickering across his face, quickly morphing into disdain as he glanced her up and down. "What's your name, Grandma? You know this is a coffee shop, not a retirement home." Mavis's determination flared. "I'm not here for your entertainment, young man. I've lived in this neighborhood longer than you've been alive, and I'm here to support my community, not to be mocked by someone who thinks wealth gives them superiority." The air in the coffee shop thickened with tension. Mavis could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her, waiting to see how this confrontation would unfold. For a brief moment, she considered retreating. Would it be easier to let it go? But she shook her head, the years of resilience and strength pushing her forward. "What a quaint little story," Bradley replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But honestly, who cares? You're just taking up space. This place could use a little modernization anyway." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mavis stood her ground, anger flaring in her chest, but tempered by a calm she had cultivated over the years. "This quaint little story, as you put it, is my life. I've poured my heart into this neighborhood, into this building you disrespect." Bradley scoffed, leaning back against the counter as if to dismiss her. "You're just an old woman clinging to the past. Nobody wants to hear your sob story." Mavis felt the heat rising in her cheeks, but she took a deep breath, drawing strength from the memories of her life. The laughter of her children, the support of her friends, the countless times she had helped her neighbors. "I have built this community alongside my neighbors, and I won't let you disrespect it. I own this building, young man. It's not just a coffee shop. It's a cornerstone of our history." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, silence enveloped the room. Bradley's face paled, disbelief washing over him. "You own this building?" he stammered, incredulity etched across his features. The laughter from earlier faded into a tense silence, curiosity replacing the mockery. "Yes," Mavis replied firmly, her heart racing as the realization of her words sank in. "I may be elderly, but I am not powerless. I have fought for this neighborhood, and I will not allow anyone to tarnish its legacy." The patrons exchanged glances, the energy in the room shifting as they began to process the truth. Mavis could feel the tide turning in her favor, the support of the community slowly rising like a tide. She had always believed in the strength of unity, and today that belief was being tested. Bradley's bravado faltered, and he shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his friends, who looked equally taken aback. He began, but the words faltered on his tongue. Mavis stood tall, her gaze unwavering, as she sensed the shift in the crowd. They were no longer mere spectators. They were now witnesses to a moment that challenged preconceived notions about wealth and respect. "Do you know how many lives have been touched by this building?" Mavis continued, her voice steady. "How many families have found hope here? This coffee shop is more than just a place to grab a drink. It's a gathering space, a sanctuary for those who need it most." Bradley opened his mouth, but no words came out. The realization began to dawn on him that his privilege had blinded him to the truth of the world around him. Mavis's heart raced, not just from anger, but from the weight of her community's legacy resting on her shoulders. As the patrons began to murmur their agreement, Mavis felt a surge of empowerment. She had faced many challenges in her life, but this moment was different. It was not just about her. It was about standing up for everyone who had been marginalized and underestimated. "Maybe it's time for you to learn a lesson about respect," Mavis said, her voice carrying a strength that resonated with the crowd. "You may have money, Bradley, but that doesn't make you superior. Respect is earned through kindness, through understanding, and through community." The tension in the coffee shop was palpable, and Mavis could see the wheels turning in the minds of the patrons. They were beginning to see the truth, to understand the depth of the community that surrounded them. Bradley's friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure of how to react. The once boisterous group had fallen silent, realizing that their leader had misstepped in a way they couldn't ignore. Mavis felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this moment would make a difference. "Maybe you should take a good look around, Bradley," she said, her voice steady. "You're not just in a coffee shop, you're in a community, and that community will not be disrespected." As Mavis stood there, she felt a sense of solidarity growing among the crowd. This wasn't just about her confrontation with Bradley. It was about the collective experience of everyone who had ever felt belittled or marginalized. She was not alone. Bradley's face flushed with anger, but Mavis remained resolute. The truth was out, and she had found her voice. With the atmosphere thick with tension, Mavis felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The patrons, once silent observers, began to shift in their seats, their expressions revealing a mix of surprise and contemplation. It was as if a collective realization had dawned upon them, a recognition of the prejudices that often lay dormant beneath the surface of their everyday lives. "Look, lady," Bradley finally managed, his bravado cracking. "This place isn't yours just because you've been around longer. It's about progress, and you're just holding it back." Mavis shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips despite the confrontation. "You think progress means pushing people aside? You're mistaken, young man. Real progress is lifting each other up. This community has thrived because we support one another, not because we look down on each other." The murmurs among the crowd grew louder, and Mavis could see some patrons nodding in agreement. She felt a rush of adrenaline, each heartbeat echoing the resolve within her. This was more than just a personal confrontation. It was a stand for the community she loved. As Bradley opened his mouth to respond, Tasha, the barista, stepped forward, her face alight with newfound courage. "You know, I've worked here for years, and I've seen Mavis help so many people. She's organized events, provided meals, and even helped me when I was struggling to pay my rent. She's a part of this place." Mavis turned to Tasha, gratitude flooding her heart. It was the younger generation's support that filled her with hope. She had always believed in the importance of intergenerational connections, and here, she was witnessing the fruits of her labor. Bradley's expression darkened, his arrogance slowly unraveling. "You're all just upset because you're afraid of change. Change is inevitable, and people like her will just have to accept it." "Change doesn't have to mean destruction," Mavis shot back, her voice ringing with authority. "You can change and grow while respecting the roots of the community. You want to bring in your fancy coffee chains and upscale boutiques, but what about the people who have lived here their entire lives? You're not just an outsider, you're a threat." The atmosphere shifted, and Mavis could sense the crowd rallying behind her. People began to speak up, sharing snippets of their experiences, their voices merging into a powerful chorus. Mavis helped my kids with school supplies. She organized the summer block party. She's the reason I found a job. As the stories flowed, Bradley's face transformed from disbelief to anger. He was losing control of the narrative, and the realization clawed at his pride. Mavis could see his friends beginning to distance themselves, their expressions revealing discomfort and a reluctance to align with his views. "Enough!" Bradley shouted, his voice rising above the din. "This is ridiculous. Just because you've been here longer doesn't mean you get to dictate how things should be." Mavis took a step closer, her heart pounding, but her resolve unwavering. "It's not just about being here longer. It's about understanding the value of community. You may have money, but that doesn't give you the right to disregard the people who have built this neighborhood. I've poured my life into it, and I won't let you tear it apart." Bradley glanced around, taking in the sea of faces that had shifted from indifference to solidarity. It was a moment that Mavis would remember forever, a testament to the strength of her community. "Maybe you should think about what really matters," Mavis continued, her voice steady and firm. "This isn't just a business transaction for me. It's my home. It's where my family has lived, where I've raised my children, and where I've built relationships. You don't understand that kind of love." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. For a brief moment, Mavis saw the flicker of doubt in Bradley's eyes, a crack in his facade that revealed the uncertainty he had tried so hard to conceal. "Maybe you're right," he muttered, his voice softer, almost vulnerable. "But I still think this place needs to change." "Change can be beautiful if it honors the past," Mavis replied, her tone gentle but resolute. "You need to understand that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of the people who live here. If you truly want to make a difference, listen to us, work with us, not against us." Bradley stood there, his brow furrowed, as though he was processing everything that had just happened. The crowd began to disperse, but not without a few parting words of encouragement from Mavis. She felt a swell of pride and gratitude for the support that had surrounded her. As she turned to leave the coffee shop, Mavis glanced back at Bradley. He looked different now, stripped of his confidence and entitlement. There was something almost human in his expression, a flicker of understanding that hadn't been there before. "Maybe I'll think about what you said," he called after her, a hint of sincerity in his voice. Mavis nodded, a small smile breaking through the tension. "I hope you do, Bradley. It's never too late to learn." As she stepped outside, the sun warmed her face. The streets were alive with the sounds of the neighborhood, children laughing, vendors selling their wares, and the distant hum of conversation. Mavis took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment lift as she walked away from the coffee shop. In that pivotal moment, she had not only stood up for herself, but also for her community. Mavis realized that true strength lay in the bonds they shared, the resilience they had built together over the years. She had faced a challenge and emerged victorious, but more importantly, she had ignited a spark within the community, a reminder that they were stronger together. As she made her way home, Mavis felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would continue to fight for her neighborhood, to protect the legacy of love and support that had thrived for generations. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had planted a seed of change in someone who had once been blind to it. Mavis Johnson awoke the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, a gentle reminder that life continued despite the tumultuous events of the previous day. The sun streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across her modest living room. She sat up, stretching her arms overhead, and took a moment to savor the quiet, peaceful rhythm of her neighborhood. After a quick breakfast, Mavis decided to take a walk, a ritual she cherished. The streets of her community were alive with activity, and she felt invigorated by the familiar sights and sounds. As she strolled past the local bakery, the delightful aroma of fresh bread wafted through the air, pulling her toward the entrance. She exchanged pleasantries with Mr. Thompson, the baker, who grinned widely as he handed her a warm croissant. "Good morning, Mavis. Here's your favorite," he said, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You always know how to make my day," Mavis replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. As she continued her walk, she couldn't shake the events from the coffee shop from her mind. The confrontation with Bradley had stirred something deep within her, a sense of empowerment that had long been dormant. But she also felt a nagging uncertainty. Would Bradley accept her challenge? Would he truly change? Or would he dig in his heels and double down on his elitist beliefs? Her thoughts were interrupted as she approached Riverside Park, a gathering place for families, joggers, and children playing in the sun. Mavis smiled as she spotted a group of children running around, their laughter echoing through the air. She loved how the park was a microcosm of her community, showcasing the diverse tapestry of lives woven together through shared experiences. It was here that she often met with her friends, and today was no exception. Mavis spotted Clara, a fellow community organizer, sitting on a bench, her notebook propped open beside her. Clara's hair was tied back in a colorful scarf, her bright floral dress reflecting her vibrant personality. "Mavis, over here!" Clara waved, her enthusiasm infectious. "You won't believe what happened after you left the coffee shop." Curiosity piqued. Mavis hurried over, taking a seat beside her friend. "What happened? Did Bradley cause more trouble?" "Not exactly," Clara said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "After you left, a few patrons stuck around to talk about what you said. They were inspired. They couldn't believe how much you stood up to him." Mavis felt a wave of warmth wash over her. "Really? I thought they would side with him." "Not at all. They started sharing their own stories about how you've helped them, how much they appreciate everything you do for the community. It was incredible." Clara beamed. "By the end, they were all saying they wanted to get involved, to stand against any threats to our neighborhood." Mavis's heart swelled with pride. It was moments like these that reminded her why she fought so hard for her community. "That's wonderful to hear, Clara. I just hope it's not a fleeting moment. People can be quick to forget." Clara nodded. "That's true, but I think this time it's different. The seed has been planted. People are starting to realize that this isn't just your fight, it's all of ours." As they chatted, Mavis's thoughts drifted back to Bradley. She envisioned him in his sleek, modern apartment, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and privilege. Would he reflect on his actions? Would he consider what it meant to be part of a community? "Do you think he'll try to retaliate?" Mavis asked, a hint of concern creeping into her voice. Clara shrugged, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe, but I think he's more likely to reconsider his approach. You challenged him in a way he wasn't prepared for. Sometimes, that's all it takes to spark change." Mavis nodded, appreciating Clara's optimism. But as the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that Bradley might not take the loss lying down. She had seen too many privileged individuals refuse to acknowledge their privilege, clinging to their entitlement even when faced with the consequences of their actions. Later that afternoon, as Mavis returned home, she decided to check her email. She had been working on a community outreach project aimed at providing resources for low-income families, and she wanted to see if there were any updates. As she opened her laptop, a notification popped up, a message from Bradley Hargrove. Her heart raced as she clicked it open, curiosity mingled with apprehension. The message was brief, but loaded with implications. Subject: Let's talk. Body: Mavis, I would like to discuss our recent encounter at Java Haven. I believe we may have misunderstood each other. Can we meet to talk about this further? Mavis stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What did he mean by misunderstood? Was he genuinely interested in having a conversation? Or was this just a ploy to regain control of the narrative? She took a deep breath, weighing her options. On one hand, she could ignore the message, dismissing it as a futile attempt to smooth things over. On the other hand, this could be an opportunity to engage him in a dialogue about the importance of community and the value of inclusivity. Mavis decided to consult Clara before making any decisions. She quickly sent a message asking if they could meet to discuss Bradley's email. A short while later, they met at a local diner where they often gathered to brainstorm ideas. Clara was already seated when Mavis arrived, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "So what did he say?" Clara asked, leaning forward eagerly. Mavis shared the contents of the email, watching Clara's brows furrow in thought. "What do you think? Should I meet with him?" Clara tapped her chin, considering the implications. "It could be a chance to open a dialogue, Mavis, but you need to be careful. He might be trying to undermine you or play mind games. We've seen it before." Mavis nodded, appreciating Clara's caution. "I know, but I can't help but think it could be a chance to educate him. Maybe he just needs to see the bigger picture." Clara sighed, her tone growing serious. "That's a noble thought, But remember that not everyone is receptive to change. He might just be looking to save face. I understand, Mavis replied, feeling the weight of the decision press down on her. But if I don't try, I'll never know. I owe it to the community to at least attempt to reach out. Clara studied Mavis's face, her expression softening. You have a big heart, Mavis. Just promise me that if it feels off, you'll walk away. I promise, Mavis said, determination and trepidation swirling within her. I'll draft a response and see where it leads. After their discussion, Mavis returned home, her mind racing with possibilities. She took a seat at her kitchen table, the glow of the setting sun illuminating her thoughts. As she composed her reply to Bradley, she carefully crafted her words, balancing openness with caution. Let's talk. Bradley, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your willingness to discuss our encounter further. I believe it's essential for us to understand each other's perspectives better. How about we meet at Java Haven tomorrow at noon? Mavis hit send, her heart pounding as she considered the implications. Tomorrow would be a pivotal moment, one that could either foster understanding or deepen divisions. As night fell, Mavis prepared for bed, her thoughts swirling with anticipation and uncertainty. She knew that whatever happened, she had to stay true to herself and her values. The community she loved was worth fighting for, and if this meeting could help bridge the gap between differing perspectives, then she was willing to take the risk. The following morning, Mavis awoke with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The sun was bright, casting a golden glow through her kitchen window, but the warmth did little to soothe the fluttering in her stomach. Today was the day she would meet Bradley Hargrove, and she knew it could change everything. After a quick breakfast, she dressed carefully, opting for a simple but elegant floral dress that reflected her vibrant spirit. She wanted to project confidence, while also reminding Bradley of the beauty that existed in her community. Mavis gathered her things and made her way to Java Haven, her heart racing with every step. As she entered the coffee shop, she noticed that the atmosphere was different from the last time she had been there. The patrons were engaged in lively conversations, laughter echoing off the walls. Mavis felt a surge of pride, realizing that the sense of community she had fought for was alive and well. She spotted Bradley at a corner table, his expression unreadable as he sipped his coffee. He glanced up, his eyes narrowing slightly as they locked onto hers. Mavis took a deep breath, reminding herself of the importance of this moment. Whatever happened today, she had to stay true to her convictions. Thank you for meeting with me, Mavis said as she approached his table, her voice steady. Of course, Bradley replied, his tone cool but not unfriendly. I think we need to clear the air about yesterday. Mavis took a seat across from him, the tension palpable. I agree. I think it's important for us both to understand where the other is coming from. Bradley leaned forward, his demeanor shifting slightly. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. You made some valid points. More than I expected, honestly. Mavis studied him, searching for sincerity in his words. I appreciate that, but it's important to remember that it's not just about me. This community is built on relationships, on respect for one another. He nodded slowly, his brow furrowing. I get that. I know I came in here with a mindset that was entirely based on my experiences and successes, but I didn't consider the impact of my words. Mavis felt a flicker of hope. That's a good start, Bradley. Acknowledging that is the first step, but real change comes from understanding the deeper issues at play, the history, the struggles, and the triumphs of this community. Bradley took a sip of his coffee, contemplating her words. What do you think I should do? I want to be part of the solution, but I don't want to overstep or come off as patronizing. That's a great question, Mavis replied, her heart warming at his willingness to engage. Start by listening. Attend community meetings, get to know the people who live here, and understand their needs. It's not about saving us. It's about working alongside us. A thoughtful silence enveloped them, and Mavis could see the gears turning in Bradley's mind. You know, I've been involved in some projects that aim to modernize neighborhoods, but maybe I've approached it all wrong. Instead of just doing what I think is best, I should be collaborating with the people who actually live here. Mavis nodded, encouraged by his willingness to consider a different perspective. Yes, collaboration is key. The community has its own ideas and solutions, and they are often more effective than anything imposed from the outside. As the conversation continued, Mavis was struck by the transformation happening before her eyes. Bradley was no longer the arrogant millionaire she had confronted the day before. He was genuinely trying to understand. They discussed the challenges facing the neighborhood, from rising rents to the importance of preserving local businesses. Mavis shared stories of families who relied on the resources provided by community organizations, recounting how support had made a difference in their lives. "I never realized how much depth there was to this community," Bradley admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "I've been so focused on my own success that I lost sight of what really matters." Mavis smiled, sensing the shift. "That's the beauty of this place. We all have our stories, our struggles, and our victories. It's what makes us strong." As their conversation began to wind down, Mavis felt a sense of accomplishment. They had bridged a divide, and it felt as though they were on the cusp of something meaningful. "Thank you for being patient with me," Bradley said, his tone sincere. "I want to make things right. If there's any way I can support your community initiatives, please let me know." Mavis's heart swelled with hope. "That would be wonderful, Bradley. Together we can create a more inclusive future for everyone." As they stood to leave, Mavis felt a sense of possibility in the air. This meeting was just the beginning, a small step toward a more united community. She had taken a risk by agreeing to meet with Bradley, and it had paid off in ways she hadn't anticipated. As she walked out of Java Haven, Mavis felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for her community was far from over, but she now had an unexpected ally in Bradley. Perhaps, together they could forge a path toward progress that honored the past while embracing the future. With the sun shining brightly above, Mavis stepped into the vibrant streets, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but today had shown her that transformation was possible, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Mavis awoke the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The sun filtered through her curtains, illuminating the small trinkets and memories that filled her home. Each item told a story, a thread woven into the fabric of her life and her community. She felt an unfamiliar excitement bubbling within her, a mixture of hope and trepidation. The conversation with Bradley had opened a door she never expected to find, but it also left her wondering what lay ahead. After a quick breakfast, Mavis prepared for the community meeting she had organized that evening. It was an opportunity for the residents to discuss their concerns and aspirations for the neighborhood, and she wanted to ensure it was well attended. As she made her way to the community center, she couldn't shake the feeling that today would be pivotal. When Mavis arrived, she was greeted by the familiar sight of families gathering, children laughing, and the aroma of food wafting through the air. This space had always felt like a second home to her, a hub of connection and collaboration. As she entered, she noticed Clara setting up chairs, her face lighting up at the sight of Mavis. "Hey, how did your meeting with Bradley go?" Clara asked, her enthusiasm palpable. "It went surprisingly well," Mavis replied, feeling the warmth of her friend's support. "He seemed genuinely interested in understanding our community." Clara raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping into her voice. "Really? That's not what I expected. What's his angle?" "I don't know yet," Mavis admitted, her heart racing at the thought. "But I think he might be willing to work with us. He's expressed interest in attending our meeting tonight." Clara's eyes widened. "Wow, that could be a game changer or a disaster." Mavis chuckled, appreciating Clara's candor. "Either way, we need to be prepared. It's important that everyone feels empowered to share their thoughts, especially if he's there." As the meeting began, Mavis took her place at the front of the room, her heart pounding with anticipation. The community center filled with familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and families who had come to voice their concerns and ideas. Mavis looked around, feeling a swell of pride. This was their space, a sanctuary for their voices to be heard. "Thank you all for coming," Mavis began, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "Tonight we have a chance to discuss our vision for the future of our neighborhood. I want everyone to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts." As the discussion unfolded, Mavis watched as people spoke passionately about the issues affecting their lives. Mr. Johnson, a retiree, expressed concerns about rising rents pushing families out. Aisha, a single mother, spoke about the need for after-school programs for her children. The room buzzed with energy, each voice adding to the collective narrative of their community. Then, just as the discussion was reaching a crescendo, Mavis spotted Bradley entering the room. He stood at the door for a moment, scanning the faces of the crowd. Mavis felt a wave of anxiety wash over her, unsure how the community would react to his presence. Would they feel threatened? Would they embrace the opportunity for dialogue? "Everyone, I'd like to introduce someone who has graciously decided to join us tonight," Mavis said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "This is Bradley Hargrove." The room fell silent, eyes shifting toward Bradley, who stepped forward, his expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. Mavis could sense the tension in the air, the collective apprehension of the crowd. "Thank you for having me," Bradley began, his voice steady but cautious. "I know I'm an outsider, but I'm here to listen and learn. I want to understand the issues you're facing and how I can help." Mavis watched as the crowd reacted. Some crossed their arms defensively, while others leaned forward, intrigued. She knew it wouldn't be easy for Bradley to win their trust. But this was a start. "Let's be honest," Mr. Johnson interjected, his tone firm. "You've come into our neighborhood with your big ideas and plans without considering the people who live here. How can we trust you?" Bradley nodded, acknowledging the skepticism. "I understand that my actions may have spoken louder than my intentions. I came here with a mindset that was misguided, but I genuinely want to change that." Mavis felt the tension in the room shift slightly, curiosity mingling with skepticism. This could be the moment where they could bridge the gap between their perspectives. As the discussion continued, Mavis noticed a remarkable transformation taking place. Bradley was actively engaging with the community members, asking questions and listening intently to their concerns. He took notes as they spoke, his demeanor shifting from arrogance to humility. It was a sight Mavis had not expected to see. But just as things seemed to be progressing, a voice broke through the conversation, cutting through the hopeful atmosphere like a sharp knife. Rita, a longtime resident known for her outspoken nature, stood up, her arms crossed defiantly. "Forgive me, but I'm not sure I believe you," she said, her voice unwavering. "What makes you think you can help us? You come in here thinking you can solve our problems without understanding our history." Mavis felt a pang of concern. Rita was right. Bradley's presence had stirred the pot, and it was crucial that he didn't dismiss their history. She could see the tension rising again as Bradley opened his mouth to respond. "I can't change the past," he said, his voice low and steady, "but I want to listen to it. I want to understand how the decisions I make can impact this community and its future." Rita's gaze didn't waver. "Understanding isn't enough. We need action. We need to know you're committed to real change, not just words." The room fell silent, and Mavis could feel the weight of the moment. She knew it was time for Bradley to prove himself, to show that he was not just a wealthy outsider, but someone willing to stand by the community. "Rita's right," Mavis said, stepping forward to support her friend's point. "We need assurance that you'll be here for the long haul. Talk is one thing, but actions speak louder." Bradley looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the residents. "I'm willing to commit to supporting community initiatives, to investing in projects that benefit everyone. I want to work alongside you, not dictate what happens here." The atmosphere in the room shifted again, but doubt still lingered. Mavis could sense the skepticism, the need for proof in a world where words often fell flat. "Let's start small," Mavis suggested. "How about we create a community advisory board? It could serve as a platform for residents to voice their concerns and collaborate on projects that matter to them." Bradley nodded, a spark of enthusiasm lighting up his face. "I'd love to be part of that. I'll help fund it, and we can work together to make sure it's effective." Rita crossed her arms, still wary but slightly appeased. "That's a good start, but we need transparency. We can't have you pulling strings behind the scenes." "Transparency is key," Bradley agreed, his tone earnest. "I'll commit to regular meetings, updating you all on my actions and decisions. I want this to be a partnership." As the discussion continued, Mavis felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a step in the right direction. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play. Would Bradley truly follow through, or was this just a fleeting moment of sincerity? The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of purpose, but Mavis knew they had a long road ahead. As people began to file out of the community center, Mavis caught Bradley's eye. He approached her, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension on his face. "Thank you for today, Mavis," he said, his voice low. "I appreciate your support, and I know I have a lot to prove." Mavis nodded, her heart pounding with uncertainty. "Just remember, it's not just about you or me. It's about all of us. I understand, he replied, his expression earnest. I won't let you down. As Mavis stepped outside, the cool evening air washed over her, a refreshing reminder that change was possible, but it required vigilance and commitment. She glanced back at the community center, her heart heavy with the weight of the challenges ahead. She had fought for this community for so long, and now, with Bradley's unexpected involvement, the stakes felt higher than ever. With determination in her heart, Mavis walked home, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the fight for her neighborhood was far from over. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as Mavis and the community rallied around the idea of establishing a community advisory board. The excitement was palpable. Residents were eager to have their voices heard and to shape the direction of their neighborhood. Mavis found herself at the center of it all, organizing meetings, gathering input, and facilitating discussions. Each conversation felt like a thread weaving the fabric of their community even tighter. But amid the optimism, a sense of unease lingered in Mavis's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that Bradley's commitment might not hold up under pressure. He was a wealthy businessman, after all, and Mavis knew that the world of money often came with its own set of complications. As the advisory board meeting day approached, Mavis prepared diligently. She printed agendas, gathered materials, and reached out to various community members to ensure a good turnout. She wanted to set a precedent for transparency and collaboration from the very beginning. On the day of the meeting, the community center buzzed with energy. Mavis arrived early, her heart racing with anticipation as she set up the room. Clara helped her arrange chairs, and together they decorated the table with colorful banners that reflected the diversity of their neighborhood. "I can't believe how many people showed up," Clara said, glancing around the room filled with residents, each face a mix of excitement and skepticism. Mavis nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "This is our chance to make a real difference." As the meeting began, Mavis welcomed everyone and introduced the concept of the advisory board. She emphasized the importance of collaboration and the need for a united voice. "This board is about all of us, our concerns, our dreams, and our vision for the future of this community," she declared. Bradley arrived a little late, slipping into the back of the room. Mavis noticed him, but continued with the agenda, determined to keep the focus on the residents. She felt a wave of relief wash over her when she saw that the crowd was receptive to the idea. As the discussions progressed, community members voiced their concerns about various issues: the lack of affordable housing, the need for better public transportation, and the desire for more youth programs. Each speaker brought their own unique perspective, and Mavis felt the energy in the room build. When it was Bradley's turn to speak, Mavis's heart raced. She was curious yet apprehensive about how he would address the group. He stood up, clearing his throat as he looked out at the sea of expectant faces. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of this," he began. "I know I'm new to this community and I've made mistakes, but I want to help in any way I can. I've heard your concerns and I take them seriously." Mavis watched as the crowd reacted. Some nodded while others remained guarded. "I'm committed to funding initiatives that benefit the community," he added, "but I also want to hear from you about how we can make these programs effective." Rita raised her hand, her expression skeptical. "You say you want to help, but I still don't see how we can trust you. Your wealth gives you power. But what happens when your interests conflict with ours?" Bradley met her gaze, his expression resolute. "That's a valid concern, and I understand the hesitation. I promise that any decisions made will involve the board's input. I want to ensure that we're aligned in our goals." Mavis felt the tension in the air as residents exchanged glances. She sensed that the room was on the brink of division, and it was crucial to keep the conversation constructive. "Perhaps we should discuss specific initiatives we'd like to see," she suggested, hoping to steer the focus back to collaboration. As the meeting continued, Mavis noticed that Bradley was trying to involve with the community genuinely. He asked questions, offered insights, and even took notes on suggestions. But just as the atmosphere began to shift toward a more positive direction, a loud crash interrupted the proceedings. Everyone turned to see Marcus, a local artist, standing at the door, his face flushed with anger. "I can't believe this. Are we really letting this guy come in here and pretend he cares about us?" he shouted, pointing at Bradley. "This is a joke." The room fell silent, and Mavis felt her heart race. Marcus had always been passionate about preserving the integrity of the community, but his outburst threatened to derail the meeting. "Marcus, please," Mavis called, trying to calm him down. "Let's hear what you have to say." "I don't need to say anything. This guy's just here to save face. He wants to throw money at us and think we'll be grateful. But what about our culture, our history?" Marcus's voice echoed through the room, his frustration palpable. Mavis felt the tension rise again, a ripple of unease spreading among the attendees. She understood Marcus's concerns. They were valid, but they needed to find a way to channel that anger constructively. "Marcus, I hear you," Mavis replied, trying to maintain her composure. "But this is about more than just one person. We have an opportunity to work together, to create something meaningful for our community." Bradley stood motionless, his face a mask of uncertainty. Mavis turned to him, hoping he would respond thoughtfully. "This is your chance to address the concerns directly," she urged him. Taking a deep breath, Bradley stepped forward, his voice steady but measured. "I know I have a lot to prove. I understand the skepticism, and I welcome it. I want to learn from all of you, what you value, what you want to protect. I don't want to impose my vision on this community. I want to partner with you all." Mavis could see some residents softening slightly at his words, but Marcus remained unconvinced. "You can't just walk in here and expect us to accept you. Actions speak louder than words." "I agree," Bradley replied, meeting Marcus's fierce gaze. "And I'm willing to put my resources behind the initiatives that matter to this community. But I need your guidance. I need to know what you want." The room buzzed with mixed reactions, the atmosphere thick with tension. Mavis felt the weight of the moment, aware that they were at a crossroads. Would they be able to move forward together, or would old wounds and mistrust continue to fester? "Let's take a vote," Mavis suggested, her heart racing. "How many of you are willing to give Bradley a chance to prove himself through this advisory board?" Slowly, hands began to rise. Mavis felt a flicker of hope as more and more people raised their hands, some still hesitant but willing to give it a try. Marcus crossed his arms but remained silent, a storm brewing behind his eyes. Mavis knew they had to keep the conversation going to ensure that everyone felt heard and valued. As the meeting wrapped up, Bradley stepped away from the table, visibly relieved but still aware of the skepticism that lingered in the air. Mavis felt the tension ease slightly, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. "Thank you all for your honesty and commitment," she said, looking out at the crowd. "This is just the start. We have a chance to shape our future together." As people began to filter out of the community center, Mavis caught Bradley's eye. He approached her, a mix of gratitude and apprehension in his expression. "Thank you for today, Mavis. I know it wasn't easy," he said, his voice low. "Just remember, this is about all of us," she replied, her heart still racing from the intensity of the meeting. "We need to earn that trust, and it won't happen overnight." "I understand," he said, determination shining in his eyes. "I'm ready to put in the work." Mavis nodded, feeling the weight of their shared responsibility. They were on a precipice, and she hoped they would leap into the unknown together, forging a new path for their community. With the sun setting behind them, Mavis stepped outside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew that the fight for her neighborhood was far from over, but she felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose, ready to navigate the complexities of change. The weeks that followed the advisory board meeting were a blur of activity. Mavis, Bradley, and the other board members worked tirelessly to address the community's concerns. They organized workshops, facilitated discussions, and collaborated on initiatives aimed at improving the lives of the residents. Mavis was heartened by Bradley's dedication. He showed up to every meeting, listened intently, and followed through on his commitments. He even started volunteering at the local community center, spending time with the children and getting to know the families on a personal level. One sunny afternoon, Mavis and Bradley found themselves walking through Riverside Park, discussing the progress they had made. The park was alive with activity, children laughing as they chased pigeons, families picnicking on the grass, and the gentle hum of conversation filling the air. "I never imagined I'd be spending my weekends like this," Bradley admitted, a smile playing on his lips as he watched a group of children playing tag. Mavis chuckled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "It's not exactly the glamorous lifestyle you're used to, is it?" "No, but it's real," he replied, his gaze meeting hers. I've learned more in these past few weeks than I have in years. This community has shown me the true meaning of connection. Mavis nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. Bradley's transformation was remarkable, a testament to the power of community and the human capacity for change. As they continued their walk, they discussed the upcoming community festival, an annual celebration of their neighborhood's rich culture and heritage. Mavis had been instrumental in organizing the event, and this year, with Bradley's support, it promised to be bigger and better than ever before. I'm so excited for the festival, Mavis said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. It's a chance for us to come together, to celebrate our shared history, and look forward to the future. Me too, Bradley replied, his enthusiasm matching hers. I've been working on a special project for the festival, something I think everyone will appreciate. Mavis raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What is it? You're being very secretive. Bradley grinned, a mischievous glint in his eyes. It's a surprise, but I promise you'll love it. On the day of the festival, the park transformed into a vibrant tapestry of colors, music, and laughter. Food stalls lined the pathways, offering a delectable array of cuisines from around the world. Children danced to the rhythm of the drums, their faces painted with bright colors. Families gathered around picnic tables, sharing stories and laughter. Mavis stood at the entrance, her heart overflowing with joy as she watched the community come alive. She spotted Bradley approaching, a large canvas draped over his arm. Ready to unveil your surprise? She asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Absolutely, he replied, a grin spreading across his face. Together they carried the canvas to the center of the park, where a small stage had been set up. As Bradley removed the drape, the crowd gasped. The canvas revealed a stunning mural depicting the history of their neighborhood, from its humble beginnings to its vibrant present. It was a masterpiece, capturing the essence of their community's resilience, diversity, and unwavering spirit. Mavis's eyes welled up as she took in the mural, its vibrant colors reflecting the tapestry of lives woven together through shared experiences. It was a powerful symbol of their unity, a testament to the strength they had found in one another. This is incredible, Bradley, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. It's for the community, he replied, his gaze meeting hers, a reminder of where we've been and where we can go together. As the festival continued, Mavis watched as residents gathered around the mural, their faces alight with wonder and appreciation. It was a moment that transcended words, a shared experience that bound them together. Later that evening, as the festivities began to wind down, Mavis and Bradley stood side by side, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant hues. The air was filled with the sweet scent of barbecue, the lingering melodies of music, and the echoes of laughter. Thank you for everything, Mavis, Bradley said, his voice sincere. You've shown me the true meaning of community. Mavis smiled, her heart filled with gratitude. We've done this together, Bradley. You've become a part of us. Bradley's eyes met hers, a depth of understanding passing between them. They had come a long way from a tense confrontation to a shared vision for the future. As the last of the festival goers dispersed, Mavis and Bradley walked towards the mural, its vibrant colors glowing in the twilight. They stood there for a moment, side by side, two individuals from different worlds united by a shared purpose. Mavis knew that the challenges facing their community were far from over, but she felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. They had built a bridge, and together they would continue to fight for a future where everyone belonged, where every voice mattered, and where the spirit of community thrived. As they turned to leave, Mavis glanced back at the mural, its colors fading into the night, but its message etched forever in the heart of their neighborhood. The transformation had begun, and Mavis knew that together they would create a brighter future for generations to come. The seeds of change had been planted, and she had faith that they would blossom into a vibrant garden of hope and unity. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.